Tennessee's Pro Days coming up later today. Who will be out there competing for the Volunteer brand? Josh Ward stops by for a little Ward Wednesday action and some of the better fights in sports history. All that you have to look forward to here on a Wednesday show.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. I am your host, Eric Cade. You can find me on Twitter @_Tanner. On the show on Twitter @Locked On Vols. 5 days a week, weekday mornings when you wake up, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. Thanks so much for subscribing and watching on YouTube, and of course, wherever you get your podcast. Guys, it's a little hump day edition of Locked On Vols. We'll have Josh Ward coming up here momentarily. We'll talk NFL Pro Day and some fights that's brought to us by Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars the other night. It's been one of the trendy sports radio topics, and I thought I'd bring it on the show, have a little fun here today. If you're new to the show, pull up a seat and hang out with us. I do radio in Knoxville, Tennessee at 99.1 The Sports Animal. I write for the Rival site covering the University of Tennessee football and recruiting. So that's a little bit about me. Let's get into it. Tennessee's Pro Day coming up later today, and the Volunteers will have 9 participants going through drills. Of course, you've got the big 4, and that's defensive back Alante Taylor, offensive lineman Cade Mays, wide receiver Bayless Jones, and defensive lineman Matthew Butler. Those 4 guys went to the NFL Combine. The 5th would be Theo Jackson. You had Matthew Butler and defensive back Theo Jackson that participated in the Shrine Bowl, while the 3 others, Alante Taylor, Cade Mays, and Bayless Jones, were down in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl earlier this year in January. The other participants for Tennessee, the other 4, will be defensive lineman Jaquan Blakely. You've got defensive back Kenneth George Jr., wide receiver Javante Payton, and walk-on linebacker Donovan Slates. A lot of you guys are probably saying, who is Donovan Slates? I don't know who Donovan Slates is. He's a walk-on, but I'll tell you this. You get one pro day, all right? Go out there to say that you did it, right? Anything can happen. There's not going to be anything that happens to Donovan Slates. I would be shocked if it happened, but you only get one pro day, so go out there and have fun with it, right? I can't blame him at all for doing that. But this is a big day for guys like Alante Taylor, guys like Velus Jones and Cade Mays. Alante Taylor, he's a guy that likely is going to be a day 3 guy. Of course, you have the round 1 on day 1, rounds 2 and 3 on day 2, and then rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 on day 3. You look at Alante Taylor, and he had an interception in the Senior Bowl. I'm not going to lie to you guys. He got beat on that play. Absolutely got beat. He adjusted well and went up and made the catch, but the ball was underthrown. But he was one of the fastest players at the Senior Bowl, according to Zebra Technology. He and his teammate Bayless Jones, who we'll get to here in just one moment. But Alante Taylor, has played pretty much every snap since stepping foot on campus as a true freshman, all the way back in 2018. 6 foot, about 195 pounds, a wingspan of 75 inches, and a hand size of 9 inches. Of course, the hand size, very, very trendy topic when it comes to the NFL draft process. But, he's a guy that I see as more of a backup in the National Football League, an immediate contributor on special teams, a guy that will get drafted likely in day 3 and can work himself into a lot of playing time and a big role at some point in the future. But for Alante Taylor, he competed in the NFL Combine. He went and did the Senior Bowl, and now he will need to conclude this process by showing out and running a good 40 time later today in the Pro Day. You've got guys like Cade Mays, and Cade Mays is a guy that at one point in time, a lot of people were giving a lot of first-round love to Cade Mays, a guy that stands in at about 6'4", 310 pounds, very versatile on the offensive line, can play tackle, can play guard. He projects as the offensive guard at the next level. He's a guy that is very quick in terms of the shuttle and the 3-cone, and has got a little bit of hops there in terms of being a big man in terms of the broad jump. He's very strong. He's a guy that you like on the offensive line, and it would shock me if he was a day 2 pick at this point, but you truly never know. I mean, offensive line, you got to go get him as a premium, especially a guy that can play a whole lot of different positions. He had 35 starts in his college career, 19 at right guard, 12 at right tackle, 2 at left guard, and 2 at left tackle. And that's, dating back all the way to his days at Georgia. Came back to Tennessee and, help overhaul a new coaching staff, or helped usher in a new coaching staff, excuse me, and overhaul an offense that was really, really boring under the Jeremy Pruitt regime, and Jim Chaney, and come in with a whole new offense. He shed some weight, and was a big reason why Tennessee was able to do what it did offensively when he was in that lineup. So I look at Cade Mays as kind of a mid-round grade, third round, high third round, probably a fourth round type of guy. But of course, we'll continue to break all this down once we get closer to the NFL draft. But Cade Mays is a guy that can certainly help himself out later today by running well, by benching well, and by going through the interview process very, very well. A couple other guys I want to highlight. Bayless Jones, really phenomenal time at the Senior Bowl. Led his team in receiving in that game. He scored a touchdown as well. And, Velus is a guy that's a very trendy pick to the New Orleans Saints. Why? Well, Cody Burns, former receivers coach here at the University of Tennessee, is now the receivers coach down in New Orleans. And wouldn't shock me at all. A lot of talk about mid-round, pick to the New Orleans Saints, fourth round pick to the New Orleans Saints, fifth round pick to the New Orleans Saints. That might be the future for a guy like Velus Jones, who has seen his stock rise because of the play he had in the wide receiver this past season. Operating out of the slot, he can play the outside as well, but what he's able to do with the ball in his hands and being able to create some things out of nothing. Plus, he's always been a very, very skilled returner at the Power 5 levels, an all Pac-12 returner, and was the Special Teams Player of the Year, in terms of the returner for both punt and kickoff. He was very skilled in that regard here this past season. So got a guy in Bayless Jones that can, he can run fast. He can line up a wide receiver. He weighs over 200 pounds, looks like a running back. I think he is continuing to see his stock rise, and I think the Senior Bowl certainly helped him. One of the fastest players at the Senior Bowl as well, along with Alante Taylor per Zebra technology. And one thing about Bayless is he was a 6-year college player. He's going to be 25 years old as a rookie. That screams Joe Burrow, right? I mean, it's an older guy. So we'll have to see how that will affect any team. Obviously he's not going to be a first or a second rounder, but for the mid round, that seems to be okay. Two more. We'll go Matthew Butler first. Maybe the most underrated player in the NFL draft at his position, that being the defensive line. I can see him being selected in the third round, and I can see him being a starter at the National Football League at one point or another. Third round, fourth round, probably more of the latter, probably the fourth round. He's a mid-round guy, but when you talk about some of the best defensive linemen in the draft, his name is not one that you speak of, but had an excellent Shrine Bowl week, tons and tons of scouts and front office personnel members of respected teams really liked what they saw from Matthew Butler, the way he went to work. And that's stuff that I've seen. That's stuff that we've seen here at Tennessee for quite some time. Just the way he goes about his business and gets the job done. And he's a guy that came to Tennessee and he was not good, right? He was not good. And he just got better and better and better and better. And now has worked himself into a draftable position. Again, another mid-round guy likely for Matthew Butler, but a guy that can play the 5, a guy that can play the 1, the shade. He is a 3 technique at the next level. He's got good size, weighing at about 300 pounds, 6'3". Has really done a nice job to trim himself down, but very strong. And his work ethic is going to put him in position to get everywhere he's been. So intrigued to see how Matthew Butler goes to work later today. And then finally, Theo Jackson, probably a guy that's not going to get drafted. He was not invited to the Senior Bowl. He did go to the Shrine Bowl as a late invitee. I don't think that he's a guy that can be drafted, but maybe today he can change that, right? Theo Jackson was not a guy that anyone, had high hopes for coming into the season, but he was an all-conference player because he put in the work off the field. He watched hours upon hours of film, and he was a teacher, and he helped his fellow defensive backs. He played with a chip on his shoulder. He was in position to make the plays more so than anybody else on Tennessee's defense, and he shined, and he absolutely killed it this past season. So good for him. He has put himself in position to be on people's radars. He will be in a camp. He will be an undrafted free agent signee. He'll have to work his tail off to make a roster. I don't know if he'll make a roster, but he will be in position to make a roster. But maybe today, if he runs really well, he can fly. If he runs really well, maybe he could be on someone's radar and say, hey, we got a 6th-round pick. We got a 7th-round pick. What about that Theo Jackson guy down in Tennessee? So really intrigued to see how those guys perform. And, of course, not Jaquan Blakely. He'll be there. But I want to speak on Javonte Payton, a guy that's I think he's got all the potential in the world. He's fast, he's explosive, he's got good hands. Durability is an issue. I don't think he'll be drafted, but he's going to be there. Maybe he will impress a scout or two. So those are the guys I'm going to be watching today. I will be there at the pro day. I'll be there all day tomorrow or today. Again, recording the night before. I'll be at practice early in the morning, media availability around lunch, and then pro day in the afternoon. So if you're on Tennessee's campus, stop by and say hello because I will literally be there all day long. So hopefully I'll have some results and I will bring them to you here on this podcast, Locked On Vols, Wednesday afternoon for a Thursday show. All right, we got Josh Ward coming up here in segment number 2, but first it is Stat Hero. Man, do I love March Madness. I love those brackets. I can't remember the last time I actually went deep into one. This year certainly didn't go deep into one, and I'm not going to win my bracket challenge, but I'm hedging my bets this year with Stat Hero and NCAA's Pick'em contest. Stat Hero single game Pick'em pits the star players against one another, an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take back control from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know the best at the gameplay that doesn't rely on those wild odds, long props and stuff like that. Stat Hero gives you the advantage, resulting in their game winners 4 times as often. Why? Because Stat Hero eliminates the mystery about who or what you're going up against. They simply post sets of players for you to take on with a set of players that you choose. Stat Hero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. So right now, go to stathero.com/lockedon. Use that promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% deposit match. All right, that's stathero.com/lockedon. For a 100% deposit match. Terms and conditions, they do apply. And Built Bar, we all know what time's coming up, spring break season. I am going down to Longboat Key. I've gone down there the last couple of years, meeting my family who goes down there for an extended vacation. Guys, it's perfect setup. I don't know if you saw my picture on social media last May. Literally a house on the beach. You walk out the back door, and there's the ocean. So I can't wait, right? Well, my stupid flight got canceled, so I'm going to have to, go there and book a new flight. But my whole point in this is beach season's coming up, right? Something, a healthy snack, something, not the chips in the mid-afternoon, not the candy bars, not the chocolate shakes or whatever. Go get a Built Bar, okay? 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. It is a safe, healthy alternative to those of the unhealthy snacks like the candy bars that sometimes sit around 240 calories. If you're looking to lose or maintain weight, Built Bar is the thing for you to try. Mint brownie, coconut almond, tons and tons of selection. This month's selection is white chocolate cookies and cream. They're delicious and they're healthy for you. Go to Built.com, use that promo code LOCK15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off. That is at Built.com. Welcome back into Locked On Vols. It is your team every single day. And of course, your team is the University of Tennessee. That's the Volunteers. Thanks so much for making Locked On Vols your first listen each and every single day on YouTube and available, of course, wherever you get your podcast. That time of the week, let's bring in our good friend, Josh Ward, the host of Sports 180 on The Sports Animal. Josh, real quick, it's a time of transition with the show. A lot of changes going on in that noon to 3 slot over on The Sports Animal.
Yeah, a lot happening with Heather Harrington having moved over to WIVK, our country music station at Cumulus. So starting next week, Monday, April 4th, Jason Swain is coming to the Sports Animal and will be joining me from 12 till 3 every day. So we'll have Josh and Swain 5 days a week, and we'll have a ton of Tennessee football and Tennessee athletics and everything else coverage for you. So very excited to get started on Monday, 12 to 3 every day with Jason Swain.
Yeah, so be sure to tune in to hear Jason, noon to 3. So that's really, really exciting. Go ahead and set your alarms there. Josh, while we have you here on Locked On Vols, spring practice, 4 practices in, and we don't get an awful lot of chance to see what's going on out there. A lot of times when we hear from the players and the coaches, it's typically coach speak. So there's not a lot that we can gather. But what are some things you picked up on in the early going of Tennessee spring practice?
Well, I think there is excitement about the chance for some players to take a step forward on the defensive line. Elijah Simmons is a player that has gotten a lot of talk over the last couple of years, and rightfully so with his potential, and he's shown some of that on the field for Tennessee. Has to stay healthy. That can apply to anybody, but if Elijah Simmons is healthy this upcoming year throughout the season, I think there is a lot of optimism that he can be a consistent player for Tennessee. Amari Thomas was a highly touted player in the 2020 class, and he's a player that has come on and played some more And so when we talk about guys that have to be replaced from last year's team up front on defense, hearing some positive talk about those guys is something to get excited about. I think for Tennessee fans, we'll have a lot of talk, I think, during the summer months about pass rush, and that's going to be really important. But the development of Byron Young and Tyler Barron, I just thought what Byron Young was able to do in his first year after the frustrating start to where he was waiting to be able to play for sure. He came on and played well, I thought, a lot of the time for Tennessee and showed that he can be a disruptive player. On the offensive side, yeah, I will be curious to see the rest of the offseason, how things progress with depth and competition at running back, at wide receiver. That's the case where there are a lot of players who could be good players in this offense, considering what it is. But let's see how it comes together. And then you and I have talked about the tackle position and who are the best two guys, left and right. That's going to be an important part of figuring out what they do up front because they bring back so much personnel. If they have their tackles solidified as best they can, well, then I think the staff is going to feel really good about the offensive line.
Yeah, there are tons of storylines heading into spring practice, and of course, now we're, at the time of this, time of people listening and watching this, potentially 5 practices in, so a third of the way through, and we'll start to pick up more, as we go on. But I think the wide receiver spot is huge. Brew McCoy's been on campus earlier this week. We'll see what he decides to do. Tennessee's got to take a wide receiver, at least one in the transfer portal. You have Cedric Tillman. You've got a bunch of slots in this offense. You don't have many outside guys, and you don't have outside guys who are ready to go. I think Caleb Webb's going to be a tremendous outside wide receiver sooner or later, but he should still be in high school right now. Ramel Keaton is there, but I'm not counting on Ramel Keaton, and I don't think the Tennessee coaching staff is. And hey, he played last year. Credit to him, he came in whenever Javonte Payton got hurt. But I think Tennessee would like a better, more explosive, and faster option on the outside. I think that wide receiver spot, Jimmy Holiday, he's got off to a good start. He was rumored to maybe going to defense. Jimmy Callaway's more of a slot, but can he maybe move to the outside? A lot of storylines at that wide receiver spot, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it comes back to potential, but that was part of the conversation last year, and we heard about Cedric Tillman, and he was a guy that over the last couple of years we'd heard, okay, can do some good things, but it wasn't even at the very start of the season. It was a few games in where he really blew up, and I think that there could be a player or two in this offense that we're talking about, okay, well, let's see what he can do, and eventually that will happen because of the potential of this offense. Certainly, if you had somebody like McCoy as a transfer, we know about his potential with how he was regarded as a recruit, and he's had kind of an odd storyline of USC, Texas, USC. Now he's looking for a third school, but the athleticism and the potential are obviously why Tennessee would look to bring him in potentially to help at wide receiver. And then Jalen Hyatt is a guy where he has shown what his ability is, and he's I think proven that he can be a playmaker. Can he do that consistently? But there are a number of guys. Jimmy Callaway, I think, showed flashes of that last year, but a lot of people probably think about the drop against Florida. Playmaking ability can still be there. I like Walker Merrill and what he could be for Tennessee. So that, and then you get back to the freshman receivers. If one or two of those guys are able to help you, well, then I don't think you worry about the depth at that position anymore. So it's a wait and see progress, but the offense and the offensive staff are going to get a benefit of the doubt that they'll be able to find ways to create plays in the passing game, especially when you have Hendon Hooker coming back. If you had real questions at quarterback, it might be more concerning, but you do not right now with Hooker returning.
Josh Ward joining us for his weekly stop here on Locked On Vols. We call it Ward Wednesday. Josh, a couple players who, are no longer a part of the Tennessee program, 9 to be exact, will be taking part in Tennessee's Pro Day coming up later this afternoon. Of course, all the focus is on the Big Four of Bayless Jones. You've got Cade Mays, Matthew Butler, and Alante Taylor. Theo Jackson would be that fifth in there, but a couple other guys like Jaquan Blakely, Javonte Payton, Kenneth George Jr., some other guys who are going to be throwing their name into the hat and trying to put their best foot forward and try to impress some scouts. I think that, this Tennessee Pro Day has a lot more intrigue than I think a lot of the other Pro Days in recent memory. I know Trey Smith was a part of the one last year, but I think there's a lot of talent that's going to be on display and a chance for, especially a guy like Theo Jackson, really could go out there and help himself out and maybe move into a more draftable position.
Yeah, Theo's a guy that I'm really intrigued by because he was, I think, a surprise performer this past year for Tennessee. There wasn't a lot of offseason talk of, hey, watch out for what Theo Jackson can do for Tennessee. He was just thought of as a guy who had played a lot and was going to be valuable for the defense, but he was a difference maker for the defense a lot of the time. So a guy that has not gotten as much attention or opportunity really during the draft process, here's an opportunity at Pro Day. And he'll still probably have to prove himself. My guess is that he'll be an undrafted guy is how it plays out. But we've seen a number of Tennessee players either be really late in the draft or undrafted, and they go get an opportunity and they make the most of it in the NFL. And he will have a chance to do that. Cade Mays is an interesting story, having been from Knoxville, gone to Georgia, come back to Tennessee, helped the program, and now has a pro future. That could be a really good story to say, hey, here's a local guy that can still make things work out despite his unusual path to the draft. And that can end up being a good story for Tennessee. But those other guys, just I think their perseverance at Tennessee, Velus Jones had transferred to Tennessee, but with what they dealt with over the last couple of years to help Tennessee have a successful 2021 season and the way they represented UT, but really themselves in that process, a lot of guys are easy to pull for. Blakely, I think, is on that list too of guys that are easy to pull for. So hope they have a good pro day. My guess is that a number of these guys we're talking about are going to have to go prove themselves based on where they're drafted or undrafted, but they'll have a chance to do that. And they also know that. So I'd say that extra motivation, not that you need it trying to be a pro, but that chip on your shoulder, it's worked for them in the past and it could in the future.
From the gridiron to the diamond, no fluke. Tennessee baseball, I think, is on the path to try to get back into Omaha. It's going to be tough. You've got 2/3 of the season left in front of you. But what Tennessee did at previously ranked number 1 Ole Miss and Oxford, nothing short of impressive. This Tennessee baseball team, it's got the bats, it's got the arms, and it's the talk of the country right now.
It really is, and it's a team that looks like the total package, which makes sense considering it's a consensus number 1, which is really hard to do. I asked John Wilkerson about that on Sports 180 on Tuesday. Like, you have all these polls. It's got to be hard to find all the polls that agree. Yeah, one team is the number 1. Look at last week. It was all spread out. And he said, yeah, this doesn't happen all that often. So it says something about what Tennessee has done. The record speaks for itself, 23-1 with the only loss, no shame in it, in Houston against Texas. And if they had gone with Burns longer in that game, who knows? Maybe the outcome could have been different. But the staff is for real. The bats have been better, I think, than we might have expected at the beginning of the year, showing the power as well as the versatility. Bombs away on Friday night, not the case on Saturday, but still able to put up a lot of runs. And now the staff is going to get better as it's getting healthier. So there are just a ton of options. And then Tony Vitello's pushed all the right buttons. Doesn't mean they're going to win every game. Doesn't necessarily mean that Tennessee will win the series against Vanderbilt. But Eric, the way Tennessee is playing and the excitement that is surrounding this program, and this team has the personality to back it up. Like the comments from Ole Miss's pitcher after Friday night's game, this Tennessee team is the last team that you should make that kind of comment about. You should probably never do that in that situation. But against Tennessee, especially because they have the personality and the confidence to use that extra edge. So it's just everything's going well for Tennessee. And again, you never know about health and you never know about cold streaks and the bats could go cold. All that's possible. But I would still be a buyer in this Tennessee baseball team. They went to Omaha last year. I think that can help this team. And they believe in themselves and should that they can get back there again and not only get back, but do a little more damage if they go to Omaha again.
Last thing, I'm being cautious here. I had some people dive in the YouTube comments and make fun of me for saying this on yesterday's program, but let's look at the big picture here. Our friend Barrett Salih posted a series of tweets earlier this week, kind of saying, if you take a step back and look where Tennessee's athletic department is right now, and you compare it to other athletic departments around the SEC, you'd be hard-pressed to find another athletic department that's thriving like Tennessee is, top to bottom. Not just football, but basketball, football, women's basketball, the non-revenue sports, of course, baseball right now. I mean, how good is things going for Danny White in this Tennessee athletics department? Because you're competitive in pretty much every single sport that touches a field.
Yeah, they couldn't be going much better. Like Tennessee basketball could have gone deeper into the NCAA tournament, but I don't know anybody that's really unhappy with Tennessee basketball right now. Overall, people are still thrilled with what's going on with Tennessee basketball and should. Lady Vols went to the Sweet 16 and could have done more if not for injuries. So I think getting back to the Sweet 16 and knowing that next year's team could be better, people are happy. We've gone over the excitement around football, the Nico commitment, and just all the hype surrounding the program. Tennessee baseball, what we're talking about, and then other sports. If you look into what's going on with Tennessee athletics, we cover more of the most popular sports. Keep going, and you're going to find even better results for Tennessee athletics. So I think the the excitement right now comes from confidence in the leadership of the athletic department. So that's Danny White and his team of people running everything. Then the coaches, Tony Vitello, Rick Barnes, Josh Heupel, Kelly Harper, keep going. There are a lot of really good coaches. And then behind the scenes, like the social media aspect, Tennessee is as good as it gets nationally with playing the social media game, which connects with the fan base. And then just the energy around baseball. You take it to Ole Miss, you take it to Lane Kiffin. Fans are going to knock on wood, and I get it. But I said I'd be a buyer in Tennessee baseball, even as they're the number one team. Still a good time. You can get a pretty good stock price on Tennessee athletics because there's more potential. Now, I'll also add, long term, over the next 2 to 3 years, this conversation will be steered by football. So if the football results don't continue to grow, well, then fans will not be quite as happy. And they know that. But people at UT know that. Right now, it's a good time, and it's as good of a time as it's been in quite a while for Tennessee.
Josh Ward, you can find him on Twitter at Josh_Ward. Thanks so much for your time.
You got it. Thank you.
That is our good buddy Josh every single Wednesday right here on Locked On Vols. We call it Ward Wednesday. This episode brought to you in part by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing makes of models in your vehicles, it's now impossible for your local chain and auto sports store to keep up on everything that you need, right? So why endure the often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning that comes while you wait behind the counter for the person that shifts to their computer looking for only the parts and specification that their chain of dealership or their warehouse happens to carry? You have all those selections right in your pockets, right in the palm of your hand, in your phone, and that's at rockauto.com. Save time and money with rockauto.com. Don't choose to spend up to 30, 50, sometimes even 100% more for the same parts from the chain store or the dealership. Rockauto.com is a family-owned business serving it to do-it-yourselfers online for over 20 years. Rock Auto's prices are always so reliably low for every single customer. They have everything you can possibly imagine, from brake parts, tail lamps, to motor oils, sometimes even new carpets. Go explore their easy-to-use website to find the solution to all of your auto parts needs. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or your truck. Right Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit my friends at rockauto.com. We got a final segment left here on this Wednesday edition of Locked On Vols. Find the show on Twitter at _Canner at Locked On Vols. Go ahead and subscribe and let me know that you've done it. And we'll really, really appreciate that. Sorry, I was looking at my phone because somebody just texted me. And obviously, I cannot multitask to save my life. All right, guys. The Oscars, Sunday nights. I don't watch that show, but hey, I saw the tweets, saw the video, immediately turned it on, and then I watched the rest of it because I wanted to see Will Smith win his Best Actor award. That was wild, right? It was not staged. It was absolutely not a work. It was not staged. Even though it's kind of weird because he was laughing, kind of going off the stage, and it was just kind of an emotional night for him. Obviously, this being Will Smith, you hear the joke from Chris Rock. By the way, first and foremost, I think both are absolutely in the wrong. And you've heard this on sports radio talk shows the last couple of days. I just wanted to bring it onto the show because I thought it was an interesting topic. I 100% think both are in the wrong. Chris Rock, you're a comedian, so you gotta kind of, be able to balance that line of right and wrong. Don't go across that line. Obviously, he did. He issued an apology to Jada Smith and all that, and suffers from a condition of hair loss and all that. So, that's, I don't know if he knew. He says he did not, or sources, says that he did not, but whatever the case may be, he's made jokes about that family before. And, the Smiths, they've been the butt of a lot of jokes here lately, but like Will Smith said, when you live in the spotlight, you got to be able to roll, with the punches, no pun intended. Right. So nonetheless, I think both are in the wrong. Chris Rock should have said that. Will Smith absolutely should not have went up on live television on that stage and slapped the crap out of him. Defending the honor of his wife, whatever the case may be. You don't do that. Okay. So both are absolutely in the wrong here. But it was an emotional night for Will Smith. I mean, he had to be calmed down in the commercial breaks by a lot of different players, fellow actors, Bradley Cooper, actors, Bradley Cooper, Denzel Washington, Tyler Perry, his publicists. An emotional Will Smith obviously accumulated with him winning the Best Actor award, and he gets up there and he accepts the award for his role in the movie that I'm blanking on right now. I apologize. Something, the Serena and Venus story. for, what he did portraying their father. Did a fantastic job. But, was crying and apologizing to the Academy, apologizing to the fellow actors and nominees and all that. So looks like Will Smith's going through some stuff right now. But nonetheless, it created this conversation about some of the best fights in sports history. And, right, wrong, and different. I'm going to leave out tons and tons that you guys can hit me up on Twitter @_Kaner, @Locked On Vols, and DM me some of the fights I'm missing. But, these are the ones that jump out to me, okay? And keep in mind, I'm a younger guy compared to some of you guys listening as well. Andre Johnson, Cortland Finnegan. Gosh, that was a couple years ago. As a Titans fan, a couple years ago, it happened probably back in like 2007. But man, I'm a Titans fan, so I watched every single Titans game. Cortland Finnegan was a good cornerback, but the job of the cornerback is to get under the skin of the wide receiver, and he certainly did that to Andre Johnson. So Andre Johnson just beat the crap out of Cortland Finnegan, and Finnegan later after the game claimed that he won the fight. I thought that was hilarious. Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph here lately. Myles Garrett throwing a helmet at a helmetless Mason Rudolph was inexcusable. I think his punishment should have been a lot more severe than what it was. Love comeback stories. Myles Garrett, is learned from that. It appears he's an all-pro. He's a great player, but that was brutal, and that was kind of a scary situation there from just a couple of years ago. You had the Kansas State basketball brawl just a couple of years ago. Silvio de Sousa, he actually played for the UTC Mocs this past year when they made a run to the NCAA tournament. So fun fact, but that was just a couple years ago when they got into the stands and they were, picking up the chairs and all that. That was wild. The Blue Jays and Rangers brawl. Oh my gosh. Odor, the punch to Jose Batista. Goodness gracious. That was very, very impactful. And that was a really solid punch there. From Odor to land that. You got the Aqib Talib and Michael Crabtree brawl from a couple years ago. There's been tons and tons of baseball fights, but we haven't seen a good baseball fight in quite some time because nothing like Nolan Smith, right? Or Nolan Smith, former Duke basketball player. Nothing like Nolan Ryan, right? Where you just get a headlock and beat the crap out of him. But nowadays there's just so many. The NBA, they don't fight anymore. They get their feelings hurt. They're soft as heck. Nothing like Malice in the Palace where you go into the stands if you're Ron Artest, and that was just inexcusable, but that one obviously comes to mind. I miss fighting in sports. You get it in hockey, and that's fine, but our society is so flippin' soft nowadays. Everybody gets their feelings hurt. Everybody feels like they are owed something, owed an apology. It's ridiculous, right? The NBA is the freaking worst. You got guys that with their hurt feelings, they play one season at one place, they leave in free agency, and the next time they go back to that place, they expect a tribute video. So flippin' soft. Joel Embiid, Karl Anthony Towns, LeBron James, the softest of them all. When I say soft, I mean SAWFT. Soft is what they are. The NBA is the worst. There's no fighting in the NBA anymore because nobody can fight because they're all pansies. The NFL, it is what it is. There's chipping in there. It's hard to fight in the NFL. It's hard to fight in football because, quite frankly, you're wearing pads, right? And in football, whenever there's the Miami Hurricanes brawl from a couple years ago, that was huge. That was big time, way back in the early 2000s. But in football, you always have some idiot that punches the head when he's wearing a helmet. Why? You're going to break your hand, right? It's tough to get a good shot in football. But you get some chirping and some slinging of the face mask downs and stuff like that. That's cool. In baseball, man, I wish there's great opportunities in baseball to fight, but so many times you get chirping and you get the bullpens running out there and everybody just gets together and talks. And then of course there's two veterans that are hugging it out and laughing about it and all that. It is what it is. And then you get guys, throwing baseballs at guys, and we can get into that on a different subject because I got some strong opinions on that. But anytime you throw a hard baseball 90-something miles per hour at the head of somebody, you should never play baseball again. Just flat out pathetic. But there's no fighting anymore. Alex Rodriguez and Jason Varitek back with the Yankees and the Red Sox early 2000s. That was a fight. Jason Barrett, Chicago Cubs catcher, AJ Przinsky. That was a fight. The Subway Series is New York. The Windy Series, the Windy City Series. What do they call that with the White Sox and the Cubs? That right there was a fight. Again, 10 plus years ago, Coco Chris of the Boston Red Sox just flat out, I think they were playing the Oakland A's, just flat out took off and started decking the pitcher after he got hit. I miss those times. Again, I'm a viewer. I'm an entertainer, right? I miss those times. Everybody is so soft nowadays. So when we're thinking about fighting in sports, just know it's not what it used to be. It will never be what it used to be because our society is so SAWFT soft. Soft, soft, soft. So, Will Smith and Chris Rock, you're both in the wrong. Credit to Chris Rock for, again, no pun intended, rolling with the punches, right? Going right in there. He was shook. He was shook for sure. He's not going to press charges, apparently, but roll right into it, went into the next award, and that was, you know, credit to the Oscars. It was not staged, but boy, did they get the ratings boost that they wanted, right? Because that was incredible and led us into a fun conversation of fighting in sports. So it's not like it used to be. I sound like an 80-year-old man right now, and that is okay. But at least nobody is falling on a helmet. All right, that'll do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols on Wednesday, guys and gals. Thanks so much for tuning in. You can always find this podcast every single morning on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. 5 days a week, it is Locked On Vols. Now, after making Locked On Vols your first listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Ryan Tracy, Eric Crocker will bring the NFL Draft to life every single day. We'll highlight the front offices and all of the prospects coming up through the NFL Draft, like your very own Tennessee Volunteers. So give that a listen. Make that your second listen every day, right behind your first listen, which is Locked On Vols. Guys, appreciate it. Thanks so much to Josh Horwood for stopping by. This has been your Wednesday edition. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.